Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Srimad Bhagavatam Parivrajagacharya Ashtotara Shatashi Srimad Bhakti Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotara Shatashi Srimad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gauda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Yamunamai Ki Jai. Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, The Creative Impetus, Chapter 16, A Description of Jamadvip. Text 5. Yo Vayam Dvip. Okay. So if everybody could just please repeat after me the word by word. Yaha, which. Va, either. Ayam, this. Dvipaha, island. Kuvalaya, the Bhuloka. Kamalakosha, of the whirl of a lotus flower. Abhyantara, inner. Koshaha, whirl. Niyuta yojana vishalaha, 1,000,000 yojanas, 8,000,000 miles wide. Samavartulaha, equally round, or having a length and breadth of the same measurement. Ita, like. Pushkara Patram, a lotus leaf. Translation. The planetary system, known as Bhumandala, resembles a lotus flower. and its 7 islands resemble the whorl of that flower. The length and breadth of the island known as Jambudweep, which is situated in the middle of the whorl, are 1 million yojanas, 8 million miles. Jambudweep is round like the leaf of a lotus flower. So I'll read some more verses. Text 6. In Jambudweep there are 9 divisions of land, each with a length of 9,000 yojanas, 72,000 miles. There are 8 mountains that mark the boundaries of these divisions and separate them nicely. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives the following quotation from the Vayu Purana, wherein the locations of the various mountains, beginning with the Himalayas, are described. Dhanurvat samstite geya dve varshe dikshanotare dirgani tatra chatvari chaturasram ilavritam iti dikshinotare bharatotara kuruvashe chatvari kim purusha harivarsha ramyaka haranyamayani varshani nila nishodayas Tirachinni bhuyas samudra pavishtayo samlagnatvam angikritya badrashva ketu malayor api danor akritititvam atastayor dargyata eva madhye san kuchitayvena nava sahasraya matvam Ilavritasya tu meru sakashat chaturdikshu nava sahasraya matvam sambhavet vastutas tvalilvrita badrashva ketumalanam chatustrimshat sahasraya matvam gayam. So did everybody understand that? All right. So next, that was the purport. Next part of the purport. So next verse 7. Amidst these divisions or varshas is the varsha named Ilavrita, which is situated in the middle of the whorl of the lotus. Within the Ilavrita varsha is Sumera mountain, which is made of gold. Sumera mountain is like the pericarp of the lotus-like Bhumandala planetary system. The mountain's height is the same as the width of Jambudweep, or in other words, 100,000 yojanas, 800,000 miles. Of that, 16,000 yojanas, 128,000 miles, are within the earth. And therefore the mountain's height above the earth is 84,000 yojanas, 672,000 miles. The mountain's width is 32,000 yojanas, 256,000 miles at its summit, and 16,000 yojanas at its base. Just north of text 8. Just north of Ilavrita Varsha and going further northward, one after another, are 3 mountains named Nila, Shweta, and Shringavan. These mark the borders of the 3 Varshas named Ramyaka, Hiranmaya, and Kuru, and separate them from one another. The width of these mountains is 2,000 yojanas, 16,000 miles. Lengthwise, they extend east and west to the beaches of the ocean of salt water. Going from south to north, the length of each mountain is 1/10 that of the previous mountain, but the height of them all is the same. Purport. In this regard, Madhvacharya quotes the following verses from the Brahmanda Purana. Yata Bhagavate Tuktam Bhavanam Koshak Lakshanam Tasya Virodato Yojam Anya Grantantare Stitam Mandado Puranam Chaiva Vyatyasam Chirasagare Rahu Somo Ravinamcha Mandalat Dvi Gunoktitam Vinaiva sarvam unayam yojana bedato tratu. It appears from these verses that aside from the sun and moon, there is an invisible planet called Rahu. The movements of Rahu cause both solar and lunar eclipses. We suggest that the modern expeditions attempting to reach the moon are mistakenly going to Rahu. Nine. Similarly, south of Ilavrita and extending from east to west are three great mountains named from north to south, Nishada, Hemakuta, and Himalaya. Each of them is 10,000 yojanas, 80,000 miles high. They mark the boundaries of the three Varshas named Hari Varsha, Kimpurusha Varsha, and Bharat Varsha, India. Right, 10. In the same way, west and east of Ilavrita Varsha are two great mountains named Malayavan and Gandhamadana, respectively. These two mountains, which are 2,000 yojanas, 16,000 miles high, extend as far as Nila Mountain in the north and Nishada in the south. They indicate the borders of Ilavrita Varsha and also the Varshas known as Ketumala and Bhadrashva. Purport. There are so many mountains even on this planet Earth, we do not think that the measurements of all of them have actually been calculated. While passing over the mountainous region from Mexico to Caracas, we actually saw so many mountains that we doubt whether their height, length, and breadth have been properly measured. Therefore, as indicated in Srimad Bhagavatam by Shukadeva Goswami, we should not try to comprehend the greater mountainous areas of the universe merely by our calculations. Shukadeva Goswami has already stated that such calculations would be very difficult, even if one has a duration of life like that of Brahma. We should simply be satisfied with the statements of authorities like Shukadeva Goswami and appreciate how the entire cosmic manifestation has been made possible by the external energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The measurements given herein, such as 10,000 yojanas or 100,000 yojanas, should be considered correct because they have been given by Shukadeva Goswami. Our experimental knowledge can neither verify nor disprove the statements of Srimad Bhagavatam. We should simply hear these statements from the authorities. If we appreciate the extensive energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that will benefit us. So tomorrow is Vijay Prabhu's turn to give class. So you start off at 11. Unless we want to keep on reading. No, but we could start off at 11. You could start off at 11. Om Meganatividandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshulan Malitamyena Tasma Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karidivachalam Pangamanga Tegadim Yakripatamaham Bande Shri Gurun Ditarinam Vancha Kapadirvishcha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Brahmanityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Srila Prabhupada, he said, I heard from His Holiness Kiraj Swami in one of his classes that Prabhupada said, because when Prabhupada first came to America, this fifth canto wasn't published. When Srila Prabhupada came to America, the only book that he had was the first three volumes of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So he didn't have this fifth canto. And as time went on, Srila Prabhupada was producing his books at a great speed, at an amazing speed. And eventually he came to the fifth canto, and he was translating it and writing his purports. And before the fifth canto came out, Srila Prabhupada made a prediction, and he said, once this fifth canto comes out, many of my disciples, or at least some of my disciples, will encounter some faith crisis. It means they'll have a hard time digesting the statements of the fifth canto, because meaning that what they were taught in elementary school and middle school and high school and college, which Srila Prabhupada said is a slaughterhouse, by the way, means it's not real education. But anyways, whatever they were taught there, somehow or other, they have a lot of faith in that. And that's called conditioning, right? We have faith in what our authorities, or in some cases so-called authorities, teach us. And therefore, when we encounter some other descriptions that don't fit that description, then it's a problem. I mean, even this, because there's quite precise measurements here. We've been reading, right? 800,000 miles, and there's a Sumeru mountain, right? Also, Srila Prabhupada comments here about the moon landing. We suggest that the modern expeditions attempting to reach the moon are mistakenly going to Rahu. So it's another thing in the 5th canto, right? There's all these precise calculations of the universe and so on, measurements of. And then there's statements like this Srila Prabhupada makes about not going to the moon. So this could be problematic for people, and that's what Srila Prabhupada said, that he predicted it would be. And there was a case, one of the disciples Srila Prabhupada, his name was Purushottama. I don't know where he is now, but anyways, he had a lot of faith in the modern explanations of the universe, right? The planets and so on, moon, and specifically, actually, Srila Prabhupada he was preaching. He was on his preaching tour. He came to America. And then while on his preaching tours, I believe he was in London, but they had the moon landing, and it was televised, right? I was on TV. You remember watching that? No? Anyways, I don't know. What year was that? 1969? 1969? Okay. So Purushottama had this faith, that, okay, they're going to the moon. So then they actually they rolled a TV in, and they had Prabhupada watch it. And Purushottama said, "Oh, look, Prabhupada." And Prabhupada wasn't very impressed. And there's many statements, describing that, right? But then Prabhupada sometimes says, okay, well, even if they landed on the moon, they didn't really enter the moon, right? Because, like, for example, you land on the ocean, but there's a whole world there, right, of aquatics that you don't see. So anyways, Prabhupada said different statements. But anyways, Purushottam was quite attached to this idea. So anyways, some time passed, and Prabhupada would could say, ridicule him a little bit, joke with him a little bit about it, because he had so much conviction in it. So one time Malati, Devi Dasi, she was cooking in the kitchen, and Purushottam was around, and Prabhupada was around, and then all of a sudden this explosion happened, This explosion happened, and Malati, she came out, and she was all covered with soot, She was just covered with soot somehow. So then Malati came out, Prabhupada came out, Purushottam came out, and then and everyone is asking, "Oh, what happened? What happened?" And then Prabhupada, he kind of smiled and he said, "Oh, Malati just got back from the moon, And everybody started laughing. Besides Purushottama. He didn't like that. So anyways, eventually he stopped being Prabhupada's personal servant, and he went back to his home, or his town, place of residence in America, and I'm not exactly sure what happened after that. But yeah, these statements could be challenging to people. Now, some people, some devotees, they don't, maybe they're, you could say, less complicated by nature. Maybe they don't have so much conviction in their educational upbringing, and okay, it says it in the Bhagavatam, I accept it. Prabhupada says it, I accept it. Shukadeva Goswami says it, I accept it. So that's also there as well. Some people have that experience, which in many ways is good, because of course, we could try to understand these things. If we have the brain, if we have the intelligence, if we have the inclination, we could try to understand these things in more detail, right? But to throw away Krishna consciousness, or to throw away our spiritual practice on the basis that, oh, well, it doesn't make sense, or I don't really accept this, that doesn't make sense to do that. And as Srila Prabhupada said one time to a disciple, he said, because they were having a hard time accepting the idea of demigods existing, they said, oh, how am I supposed to accept this? Lord Brahma, and he has 4 heads. And actually, there's other Brahmas who have many more heads than 4, like 12, 16, 18, 20, like a lot, thousands. So they had a hard time accepting this Lord Brahma, and he's riding on a swan. That's like his carrier, right? So all these different, as the hippies would say, or as sometimes, whatever, at least far out things, right? But Srila Prabhupada told this devotee, well, do you like chanting Hare Krishna? Do you like Bhakti Yoga? And the devotee said, yes, I like it very much. I like it, Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, okay, fine. You put all of that on the back burner, the idea of accepting the existence of demigods, and you just continue in your Krishna consciousness, and eventually these things will become clear. So yeah, we have to be careful. And again, if we're less complicated, then we could just accept. And if we're more complicated in the sense that we have a mind that likes to, dwell and think and meditate and ponder and try to figure these things out, then we could do it, try to. But we have to be careful, because we don't want to completely lose our faith on the basis of not agreeing with the Bhagavatam. Just like Srila Prabhupada also mentions about Darwin's theory, right, of evolution. Now, a lot of devotees, or some devotees, have a hard time rejecting that idea, Darwin's theory, because that's what they grew up with. That's what they were taught since they were 5 years old or something like that. I don't know when they start teaching that. So some devotees actually never give it up. Interesting enough. Although Srila Prabhupada mentions many times how it's incorrect and why it's incorrect. And of course we have Dhruta Karma Prabhu and other devotees like that to explain it in scientific language. But still, some devotees have a hard time getting free from that. Like I've talked to some devotees and they say, well, I accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but I also accept Darwin's theory. And somehow or other they combined it as if, like, I don't know, Lord Brahma and through the whole creation or something like that. They still have faith in these things. And if we are still having faith in these things, then we can consult devotees like Dhruta Karma Prabhu and others and read their books and so on and try to understand in scientific language how Srila Prabhupada is right or how the Bhagavatam's perspective is right. And if we don't have any faith in these things, fine, don't worry about it. Also here it's mentioned about Sumera Mountain. Well, what specifically, what is this mountain with the gold? That's Sumera? The gold? Yeah, made of gold. So one disciple of Srila Prabhupada, Dhananjaya Prabhu, he said one time to Srila Prabhupada, "Oh, Prabhupada, can you tell me where that mountain is? Sumera Mountain, like Mountain of Gold." He said, "I could go with my rucksack and my chisel and I could get some gold," because he was perceiving that ISKCON was struggling financially. Some places in some places it is, but that was his perception. So Prabhupada said, no. He said, "That's too controversial." And he said, "Better you make devotees. It's more valuable than gold." But it is being mentioned here that there is a mountain of gold, Sumera Mountain, situated in Ilavrita-Varsha, Sumera Mountain, which is made of gold. So there's a lot of things going on in the universe within this creation that we just can't see or perceive. And that makes sense, because why should humans, or why should man, or why should woman be the measure of all things, right? In other words, we are super limited. Our minds are limited. Our senses are limited. The instruments we use to try to figure things out are limited. And ultimately, what can we see, right? I mean, yeah, what can we see? So, it's a bit of a challenge, actually. Like Srila Prabhupada said one time also. I keep on quoting Srila Prabhupada said, but anyways. So one time he was in a class, and then he was describing how there's these eagles who, I think they fly from planet to planet, and then they pick up elephants, and then they drop them, something like that. Something like that. And then Srila Prabhupada said that, and then he said up straight, and he said to the audience, "So what do you think? What do you think about that?" And then some guy in the audience said, "Oh, well, I can't. I mean, how is that really true? And this and that. We can't see this." And Prabhupada said, "What do you know?" He said, "You just came out of your mother's womb, You practically just came out of your mother's womb." In other words, covered by ignorance, what do we know? What can we see? We can't. So therefore, we don't rely on our limited mind, our limited senses, and limited instruments to perceive ultimate reality. We don't rely on them because they're limited. They only go so far. They can help us understand some things, but not everything, and not many things. So therefore we accept the statements of Shukadeva Goswami. And as Srila Prabhupada says, our experimental knowledge can neither verify nor disprove the statements of Srimad Bhagavatam. We simply hear these statements from the authorities. If we can appreciate the extensive energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that will benefit us. So ultimately, this whole study of the universe and so on, it is meant to help us appreciate Krishna. It's meant to help enhance our Krishna consciousness. And soon we'll be hearing, there's a lot of descriptions and calculations we'll be reading in the following classes. And then eventually we'll start at the end of the fifth canto. We'll read about the hellish planets, which the descriptions of the spiritual world are very detailed, and also the descriptions of the hellish planets are very detailed. What you have to do to get there, the punishments, and so on. One devotee was telling me also about the hellish planets. He was saying, why would Krishna create such a place, right? And he was having a hard time with that. Yeah. And it's the conditioned soul, when they commit sinful activities, needs punishment. I mean, you could learn by hearing, or eventually, if we don't learn from hearing, then there's a stick, danda. Get hit with a stick, punished. And then we, knock some sense, hopefully, into us. But it is merciful in the sense that it's not eternal. It's not that Krishna created the hellish planets and it's like eternal suffering in these terrible descriptions we hear. And then after descriptions of hellish planets, and we get into, Parikshit Maharaj wants to know, how do the living entities become free from this? How do they not go to hell, pretty much? And then that's a whole pastime of Ajamil, which emphasis on the holy name, the power of the holy name. So, all right, so we can stop there. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Tyler? Yes.
It was just really nice. I like how you kind of contextualized where we're at in the Bhagavatam on a global level, and we didn't really get into the math and the gritty details of that. I was going to start with some joke by being like, let's talk about measurements, But it's like the guru is saying, you don't know what I know. I know things you don't know that I know.
Yeah.
So you're saying to the person, I know things you don't know that I know. And then there's this humbling idea of we don't know the things that we don't know, right? We don't know all the things that we don't know. So it seems kind of puffed up to read something and be like, nah, it's not true, based on my, Because when I started reading Bhagavad Gita 10 years ago, and I got to like sun god part and stuff like that, I remember going back to Sadhu and being like, come on, dude, sun god, for real? And he looked at me and goes, you don't know that's not true. And I was like, okay. I mean, it didn't convince me, but it was like, oh, okay. All right, let's proceed, right? So I've heard of the experience for a few people who've read the Gita, and they're like, oh, I feel like I've read this before. This all makes a lot of sense, like that knowledge is in us. Like we're in this conditioned state with imperfect knowledge, but we're Satchidananda, so that knowledge is there. So the more we, progress, the more that this is revealed to us as truth, because it is truth, right?
Yeah.
So I was just thinking how funny it would be if someone's like reading Bhagavatam and they're getting to these parts, they're just going, oh yeah, Miro, yeah, 8,000, 8 million, okay, oh no problem. Like it just clicked the whole time. Like how is it not challenging to our idea of what life is to read something like that? So it'd be really interesting to see someone reading that and just being like, oh yeah, well that's what that's called. Oh yeah, what that was. So all of the acharyas and these spiritual people that are in our line, they're all translating and quoting Bhagavatam, and they praise Bhagavatam. And we know Bhagavatam is written by Vyasadeva. So we know that the Bhagavatam is true. And it's our shortcomings to not be able to fully realize it our first time true. Otherwise, what are all the gurus doing, preaching on it and every morning in class here, And this is the one they're translating. This is what everybody's pointing to, the Srimad Bhagavatam.
Yeah.
So it's like the one true thing on this earth. And to the extent that we can't perceive it as truth is like, shows how kind of fallen or in the womb we still are. So just thinking about that. It's a blessing to be able to read it. It is mystifying. I've tried a few times. Even getting through the third canto is difficult when you start getting long lists and delineations. There's so much to it. So as a group here, it's very fortifying to get through these difficult things together and have someone like you put into greater context where we're at and what the challenges with this are. So what I was thinking about the text today is that, like, on a basic overall level, like Maharaj likes to do this a lot. Like, let's take a step back and see where we're at in the Bhagavatam. So where they're describing now, is that factually supposed to be locations on Earth, or is this a general metaphor for the universe? Like, what is being described right now, this place?
It's literal. I mean, yeah.
So it's Earth. It's a place on Earth?
Well, it's the universe.
So that is a form of describing the universe that we're in, those descriptions?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Which includes all the planets and all the galaxies and all of that. And then do they show where Earth is in that descriptions?
Yeah, I mean, there's many things you could look into in relation to this. There's, devotees have made videos, describing everything in detail. Like you could say, I don't know, say like digital, diagrams describing everything and how it's all working, how it's looking, and so yeah. I would, because just to picture, which is very helpful actually, because just to picture it all in our mind, it's a lot to picture, So devotees have done a lot of work in that regard.
Is the planetarium being built to show this very thing?
Yeah,
okay.
The planetarium is being.
I stole his thunder.
Of course, we can't fit everything in the planetarium, but I think the idea is to, show the different lower. Which I don't know how they're going to do that.
Trying to figure it out still.
Yeah, it's quite a task actually.
But what you've shared is encouraging, because I was hoping it was describing the universe, because it's vast. What you're describing is huge time and space, and it's great that it's the universe, and they're not saying that was just like a country here, Like, the universe is very mystifying. It's expanding itself. We don't even really know how it was created. There's many different parts to it. So it's awesome to have a way to conceive of this place we're in right now.
Yeah.
And it should be elegant and majestic and mystifying, because it's an expansion of the Lord.
Yeah, the TOVP devotees who are working on that project, building the Vedic planetarium, they have produced some videos and things that are describing the universe in detail. But it definitely gives us more description than that of any other scripture. I mean, one, you have scriptures that just don't give you any information at all. They just say God created the earth, right? Created heaven, hell, and that's about it. There's 6 days and he rested, and there's not much description. Yeah, he got tired. He's working hard. So this gives a lot of descriptions. But then you have the skeptical people, where the people have a hard time understanding or accepting things, because one is that they get mad. Oh, religion, scripture, it doesn't describe anything. It just says God created in 6 days, then he rested. That's not good enough. We need a scientific explanation. We need some, right? But then we give them the Srimad Bhagavatam description, and they get mad with that. Yeah. Oh no, this is too much. This is too exact. This is, this doesn't line up. But of course, there are a number of devotees who are very happy with, the descriptions of the Bhagavatam and the details of it, and they're happy to read such things. That there's an actual description of it, the creation and the universe and everything. So, but it is definitely a vast subject, or a intense subject to try to understand. And the most intelligent people, materially and spiritually, it's not exactly easy to understand. Srila Prabhupada himself was taking assistance from one, I think it was anyways, one scholar devotee while translating the fifth canto. So yeah, it's quite, like I read something, Albert Einstein, he said, oh, what did he say that the most important thing, he said, I want to know how God created the universe. And he said everything else is a detail. But it's not so easy to understand how God created the universe, right?
You know, advertisements will say, like, forget everything you know about vacuums, and then try to sell you a new vacuum. That's like the Bhagavatam should be like, forget everything you knew about anything. Start over. Yeah. So we should just admit we don't know anything, humble ourselves, and just submissively hear. Yeah. And then also those eagle drop, or those elephant dropping eagles, are those malevolent or benevolent? Like, why are they dropping the elephants?
Might be.
It sounds kind of horrifying.
Yeah. I think so.
Or bringing them into
maybe
air?
They do. Anyways, we can look into it.
All right.
But, it might be, I don't know. Well, we have to look into it. I don't remember hearing much of a description. But even if you say, why are they dropping elephants? Okay, fine. But then you would say, well, why are they picking up elephants in the first place? Like,
for what reason? Yeah, good or bad? I
mean, the only thing you could think was for food, So you pick up the elephant, you drop him, and then he dies, right? And then you feed on the elephant, right? So, anyways.
Bhakta Bob in Arizona said he woke up one morning and saw an eagle flying off from his property, and it had like a possum or a raccoon in it. A big sight. And they thought it was roadkill. They go and grab and pick up. Yeah. That's a pretty big sight, an eagle with the, big possum dropping it. Yeah, so maybe we should ask him about that. That's it. Okay. All right. Anyone else today?
So, you had something? Huh? Okay.
Hare Krishna. We have a question pending on the Zoom.
Pending? All right.
I just have one quick comment in regards to Tyler's comment. I was listening to a class and this devotee said a guru, he knows that he doesn't know. But a disciple, he doesn't know that he doesn't know.
Yeah, with the disciple, they should, like Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he always said, I'm a fool before my spiritual master. I don't know anything. So he said that's the mood we should always have, that we're full before our spiritual master. We're full, but we're not a rascal. No, we're full before our spiritual master means we don't know. And we should just, even though it's maybe challenging to accept, we just accept, the guidance, instructions of the spiritual master. There's one devotee who told me that he was traveling with his guru, Maharaj, and the door was squeaking. And his guru told him, get some coconut oil and rub it on the outside of the hinges, and it will stop squeaking. And then this devotee was thinking, I don't think it's going to work, and I'm not going to, and he didn't do it. And then the guru noticed he didn't do it, so he asked somebody else. He said, put some coconut oil on the hinges of that door, extra, and stop squeaking. And the devotee did it. He just, oh yeah, sure. And he did it. And it stopped. And of course, this is a basic, example. But many times, disciples may think that the guru is not exactly in touch in other realms, more serious realms, right? Means they don't exactly know. In other words, they don't take the instruction seriously, but we should just accept it. I mean, Srila Prabhupada even said that, of course, we don't quote this a lot, and generally it's like, religious dogmatism and stuff like that, blind following. But Prabhupada said on some occasions that I followed my Guru Maharaj blindly. He said, I didn't know what the result was going to be. I followed blindly. So, means that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur told him, you go to the West, you print books. And Srila Prabhupada said, okay, I'll do that. He didn't think like, all right, well, is that really going to work? Maybe I should stay in India or whatever. You know, maybe I should do this. Maybe I should do that. He just did it, and it worked. So, okay, so yes, Vijay Prabhu, can you inform us about? Sorry, Vijay Das, local.
Yes, I can wait.
In the Srimad Bhagavatam, here it's mentioned that there's elephant eating eagles. So they pick them up and they eat them. Big eagles.
All right.
They don't drop them.
There it is.
They don't drop them.
Don't drop them. They pick them up and eat them. Okay, Vijay Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, Balaram Prabhu, thank you very much. Dandavat Pranam. Prabhu, my question is, in the presence of the inconceivable, extensive energy of Krishna, what is it that I should do? Should I try to be as extensive as he is? Should I try to surrender and serve his plan? Or should I ignore him and go for reinventing myself as a different God?
As a different what?
God.
Oh. All right. Well, I have my plan, you have your plan, and Krishna has his plan. So the trick is to try to see what is Krishna's plan and try to align ourselves with that. So we don't want to compete, or we don't want to ignore. We don't want to ignore Krishna. We don't want to compete with Krishna. We want to align ourselves with Krishna's will. And that is simple. It's a very simple thing to do. We accept a bona fide spiritual master. The spiritual master helps us. And in many ways, it's quite clear, right, what we should do. So it is simple, but it may be challenging in the beginning to align ourselves with Krishna's desires and will. But over time, the idea is we want to be perfectly aligned. And then we'll be doing the best good for ourselves and for the world, for people in the world. So yeah, that's the idea. We don't want to ignore, we don't want to compete, we want to align ourselves with Krishna's will. And this way, that will be the best for us and best for others. And actually, that's our nature. Our nature is to be in connection with Krishna, to be aligned with Krishna's will. And when we're not in line with Krishna's will, then yeah, things seem kind of unhappy, strange, confused, frustrated, etc. But if we're in line with Krishna's will, then yeah, we're not confused, we're happy, we're not frustrated. Everything's everything's under Krishna's control. So we feel ourselves, you could say, resting in the hand of Krishna. So that's what we want.
Balaram Prabhu, in accordance with your answer, is it that I am part of Krishna's plan?
Yes, you are.
By nature.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
wonderful answer.
Yeah, be part of Krishna's plan. Yeah, we have to be part of Krishna's plan. Like Arjuna, right? He said to Arjuna, all these people on the battlefield are dead, and now it's just who's going to take the credit.
Exactly.
So the idea is that we could step up and participate, right? Krishna's plan, Sankirtan movement. All right, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.